Welcome back to the Nebraskabilities podcast. I am Nate alongside my co-hosts Zach and Andy for week 11 of the college football season. We've got a lot of work to do, but Nebraska last week, if you tuned in at all, wasn't their best game and fell to the Michigan State Fighting Referees, Spartans, 17-20. And they will be wanting that game back, I have a feeling. That was a game where just not a lot of things really went the Huskers' way. And yes, there were some questionable referee calls, but overall, one could argue that Nebraska probably shouldn't have won the game anyways. So, a lot of things to clean up. I think we've got the coach to do it, but it's a long road from here, and we're still looking for that elusive sixth win to get us to a bowl game. So hopefully we can find some magic this week and kind of rekindle the fire of this team. But definitely a lot of work to go into all phases of the game, really. The defense wasn't as strong as we've seen the past few weeks, and the offense continued to sputter, for lack of a better word. It existed, but not well. And that's about really all I can say for it. I'll pass it on to Zach or Andy on their initial thoughts on what they saw last Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It was probably the roughest showing that Nebraska's had since Michigan, easily, for me. It looked like the entire team came out just flat. I don't want to say they didn't want to play. That's not the right word. But it just looked like they kind of forgot that they could do it, kind of deal, I guess. I don't know. It just looked like they forgot that they were at least defense wise, looked like they forgot kind of what they were doing and kind of forgot that they were actually pretty good. Our offense has been questionable all year, especially when you look at, injuries and whatnot, but that game was just rough. As soon as we thought maybe we had some things going, maybe we could get some momentum, we just lose it. And yeah, questionable non-penalties aside, I guess, nothing really just went the way of the Huskers. This is something we can obviously discuss more in depth later, but something that I had wondered about if maybe it was something that was affecting was it had been a while since we'd been on the road. I mean, we had 2 previous games and then a bye week in there too, where we just didn't, we didn't travel. So I'm sure that was nice, but also I think that was something that affected the team a little bit too, is that travel time was probably, and I know it was only to Michigan. So, I mean, I know it's not that far, but still, I think it was enough to really get the team off kilter. But luckily for us, like we discussed last week, we're still in the shot to go bowling. And we've got 3 chances to do it against 3 beatable teams. I think at this point, now we get to see how the team really responds, because we've got a goal in front of us, and I know Rule has said that he's going for a bigger goal, but he's obviously looking at this like, well, if we get a bowl game, not only do we get a bowl game, not only does his first year go incredibly beyond what I would consider a success. I'm sure we'd all feel the same way, but it also goes into the territory of extra practice. And I don't think anybody's going to say that we don't need the extra practice. So we'll get more into it, obviously. So I'll pass it to Andy for your quick hitting thoughts.
Hot take, but not really a hot take. We are not good on offense. That might come to a shock to a lot of you. Maybe not. It is very evident that Saturday proved that Nebraska needs to go out at some point in the portal when the season ends and get some type of quarterback that I think needs to be an actual quarterback, I think is what the team needs. And, I know Rule and Satterfield haven't specifically stated that, that's what they want to do with the future of the program. But I think right now, Nebraska kind of needs to stray away from having an athletic QB where that can do both passing and running. I think right now you have to focus on finding just a passing quarterback. Now, granted, we don't really have the receivers to do that either at this time, which those will come with time. But Saturday just proved that this team cannot play from behind. It needs to stay ahead and be ahead and just keep doing what it does. And, this is the first time that the defense has really kind of let us down since probably the start of the Michigan game. It's just proven that, the turnover snafu bug, whatever you want to call it, losing that turnover battle finally comes back and haunts Nebraska. They had won the past 3 games, just losing the turnover battle, and eventually that was going to catch up to Nebraska, and it does. Now, granted, one of those interceptions, the guy had Heinrich's first interception, was technically a punt. You could classify it that way. If you look at the spin zone of that, the guy that he should have hit was wide open and threw it 20 yards to the right to the safety. So both can go that way, but regardless, Nebraska loses the turnover battle and it finally comes back to bite them. And Saturday just proved, like I said, that Nebraska is a team that cannot play from behind down more than 1 score. And I had thought that most of the second half at 2 is, Nebraska kept going 3 and out and they were just kind of hanging on by a thread. But I was like, at some point, Michigan is going to start to get within a 2-score range. And I think then that's when, we saw Nebraska started to passing it more and speeding it up because they had to, because they just needed points. I mean, you can't run your 7-8 minute option offense when you're down 2 scores, knowing that the offensive weapons you have are very limited with Nebraska. And, I think, and who knows if this is just the season fatiguing Heinrich or anything, but I don't think he looked particularly well in the pocket in terms of decision making, trying to get out of the pocket. I mean, he just looked like flat, whether he was dropping back for a pass and trying to make a decision or trying to scramble out of the pocket. I mean, the first couple of games when he first started, like Northern Illinois, Louisiana Tech, he'd scramble out of the pocket, make some of those runs. And, he had some Saturday too, but I think he got sacked, 7-8 times? I mean, he just, did not have a good game doing that. And, you can look at the offensive line also didn't have a good game either. But, I mean, just if you look at the tape, it's just Heinrich did not look great Saturday at all. I mean, he had all 3 turnovers. The interception and then the 2 strip sacks. I mean, those are all, technically, again, like I said, the interception was an arm punt, but that's still a turnover against Heinrich when, like I said, Alex Bullock, if he had just thrown that on target, is wide open. The DB fell on the play, and that's an easy touchdown right there. And, losing by 3 points, I mean, that interception costs you 6 points, essentially, if you look at if Heinrich makes the better throw on that play. So, that could be a difference in this game of Nebraska winning 23-20 instead of losing 17-20. So overall, I think all 3 phases of Nebraska's game on Saturday was it was bad. It wasn't the worst performance they've had, but none of it was good. They looked flat on all sides of the ball, and we'll talk about more special teams because I got a bone to pick with what exactly they want to do with punt returning, because I don't know the point of putting Billy Kemp back there if you know that you're just going to fair catch it and not even attempt to make a run up, because some of those fair catches, I mean, he had 15, 20 yards in front of him how that game was going and the offense not particularly moving the ball well. I think Nebraska needed every single yard advantage they could have in that game just to set your offense up with something rather than catching it at, the 5-yard line. And I know we were all kind of irate for one of his catches. I mean, he fair catches it at the 5-yard line. It's like, dude, what, take your chance. Let the ball try to roll into the end zone. Why are you trying to catch it at the 5-yard line instead of getting, that cost you 15 yards most likely.
I I think Rule said something about that though too. Is that
Yeah.
I think he later was like, "Yeah, I didn't like that decision, and I wish I would have had it back."
Yeah,
And that he also would have let Ethan Nation take some. And it's like, okay, but
Yes.
like in the moment, obviously we're not coaches, but like in the moment, I really wish you would have decided that. Like after especially that 5-yarder or the one on the 5, like that was ridiculous.
And I think that goes back to just Rule and Ed Foley communicating, because it's like, if you're going to have Billy Kemp back, but only use him to catch fair catches because of what happened last week of fumbling, kickoffs and punt returns, it's like Michigan State knows that. Like, they're just going to absolutely boot the crap out of the ball. And, it's like, it doesn't matter how far we boot it because they're going to fair catch it and not even a chance to return. So, like Zach said, Rule had talked about putting Ethan Nations there back just to get some yards out of that, because there were plenty of chances for Nebraska to get just 10 yards out of a kick, and that's 10 less yards that the offense needs to get. Considering that second half, I mean, shoot, they had the first drive out of the second half that went 6 plays, and then I think the next 4 or 5 were 3 and outs. So just not a particularly well game all around by Nebraska. Everything about that game was just bad, and the defense, when you needed them the most that game to try to keep you in the game, just broke on a lot of big plays that set Michigan State up to score. We can argue how much we want that Michigan State's touchdown wasn't a touchdown, and theoretically it clearly wasn't, because I don't know what rule says that the receiver can use the ground to help you make a catch and complete a catch. But, I guess there wasn't enough to overturn it, even though it was very clear that even though the receiver had one hand on the ball, the other nose of it was clearly on the grass and using the grass to make the catch. But like Nate said, I mean, you can only do so much with the refs and what they do when you are not playing very well as well. A lot of jumble thoughts there, but at the end of the day, like Nate said, even if Nebraska won the game, they didn't deserve that win the game. There was just too many mistakes that they did, and just poor execution all around that cost them the game. And I think regardless of what happens at this season, I think this game and the Minnesota game, they're going to look back on as opportunities that got away from them to add 2 more wins to your win column. Those are games they are probably going to be truly disgusted and sick by of how they lost these games and like what could have been done and what could have been better with that. But yeah, we'll pass it to Nate. We'll start with what do we even do on offense?
Yep. That was, like you said, flat performance all around by the team, and we'll go into the flattest potentially phase of the game here. The offense, I don't know what you do. We're sitting, 12 for 28 passing yards, 129 yards total passing is not ideal. About 10 yards per pass there. Not going to win you a whole lot of games. I mean, the running attack is good. The running attack works, but like you said, Andy, if we're playing from behind, which we can't just sit there in the option run your 7-8 minute offense and grind it out. You got to take to the air, and you got to take those chances. And we've clearly shown that part of the game is not our forte. And I don't know really where you make the change, because you could make the case for the Jeff Sims experience, but I don't.
He's on the Sun. Remember that?
Trust that one either. So
he's got a permanent home on the Sun now.
Thank goodness.
How does he keep showing up on the sideline? How is he getting back here?
But I mean, and I don't know. I've said it all season that I don't think Heinrich is a great quarterback, but he's a good game manager. And at least that game, I don't know that you could say that, because at some point, yeah, the one interception kind of hung on him, and I don't know. You just got to make the pass to the open guy. If it's not like it was a particularly windy day or anything where the weather was really impacting things.
That ball
You just
just
gotta
it was
execute.
never on target for Bullock at all.
Yep.
I mean, it was drifting right the entire time.
Yeah, and Bullock was like screaming the opposite way, and it was
He's
just
like, I am not
bad
fast
all
enough to even
around.
try to go break
Yeah.
up this pass.
You could even see it on his face. They showed like a replay, and he was like looking up, and then all of a sudden he was like, "Oh, like it's going that way," and then you could tell him trying to track it, but that's not his fault.
Mhm.
He was told, you're going to go left, and he's like, "I guess I'm going right."
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess a positive is that we hit over 100 yards passing.
We had
So
to.
there is that. And I mean, Fedoni is showing up when he can, but I don't know. The passing game needs to improve, and I don't know how to improve it is the issue. I wholeheartedly agree. You either have to go to the transfer portal or probably put your faith in one of your recruits coming in. I mean, there could certainly be the off chance that Heinrich improves astronomically over the offseason and we see a completely different offense. But I wouldn't, as a non-betting man, I would not bet too much on that one. So, yeah, I don't know. You got to control the game if you're the Huskers. And it didn't help that the defense didn't really hold up their end of the bargain because they kind of put the offense in that really uncomfortable situation that they just don't know how to play from. And so it looked rough because it was rough. And that's not their game. Like I said, 148 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground is, I mean, that's not bad for the offense at all. But something's got to change with the passing game. And you got to be able to keep defenses honest too. So you have to be able to pass the ball a little bit and have some sort of competent quarterbacking play just to so defenses don't stack the box against you. But I don't know. It's scary looking forward, but I don't know. I will eat my words. I will say that I know last week I was talking about incremental progress that I was seeing from the offense. I think it was incremental progress backwards this week. So because that was nobody stepped up. I guess was another part of my issue with that game. It was and you can make the case too that it's a young team that again a lot of the starters aren't there, so you don't have your Marcus Washington or your Billy Kemp to say, hey, we're in crunch time, get me the ball and we'll go from there. So you don't have necessarily that presence that can hopefully lift you out of a little bit of a rut there. But I don't know, it was rough. I think Rule's got a lot of work ahead of him. Satterfield, I don't think called a great game either. There were some, questionable calls on the offensive coordinating side of things, and I don't know. It just was not my favorite game to watch. So I'll throw it over to you, Zach. I don't know if you have anything. Any positive spin on that one for the offense? But.
Well, so I'll start with this one is that, it's unfortunate that we're talking about the offense in this case first, just because I think we could start with any phase of the game and we could say about the same thing. Just nobody seemed like they wanted to execute. Shouldn't say they didn't want to. It just seemed like nobody could. It was like for every one hit that we did have that was good, we had 3 inevitable misses right after that. It was just it was death by 1,000 cuts at that point. It felt like, and no matter what we did that was good, it was always negated somewhere. And the weird thing was, is that Nebraska overall played a pretty clean game. I mean, they had some penalties, but that's kind of been one of my things all so far this year after the first couple games is that we've been a pretty well disciplined team up until this game. But this one was a different type of discipline where it's like we had good discipline when it comes to the penalty side of things, but the rest of the game just suffered. And the thing is I mean, football is definitely a game of, inches, but it's also a game of mentality and it's a game of slow progression in a way, but it just seemed like no matter what, we just couldn't do anything. And I mean, with the offense, ironically enough, I actually took like a bunch of notes after the game. And obviously, those watching on video can see this, but those that are just listening to it, there's at least a solid like 2 or 3 pages on my phone here. I'm not going to go through all of them just because this was straight up just me word vomiting. But like my first initial point was the quarterback play was awful. You can't. There is no real positive spin you can put on it, other than I guess Heinrich had a touchdown, and that touchdown play looked good. And I'm going to actually disagree with you a little bit, Nate. There were some questionable calls from Satterfield. Like this coming from me, I think is a big deal, but I don't think Satterfield's at all the one. I don't think he deserves a whole lot of blame. Some on those questionable calls, but I put the questionable calls more into the idea of like maybe this weird play call here or there will be enough to surprise them and then spur the team on. Don't always like it. Don't think it's always going to work, but I think he knows that, and he's kind of just trying to work with what he's got, and was trying to do something that would catch the other team off guard, but again, also spur the offense to do what they need to do, and just nothing happened. And at the end of the day, that falls on the players that they need to execute. And looking at some of those passes, if he would have hit Bullock on the one pass, or if he would have hit, was there one that he sent to Fedoni that was way too high? I know there was a pass that was way too high.
It was God, it might have been Jaden Doss.
Either way, there were a couple.
Yeah,
there were a couple that were just way too high.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, if you would have, well, that one of them specifically was for a first down. It was like 2nd or 3rd and 8 or whatever. Easily would have been a first down. Wouldn't have really gone too far because he had to turn around entirely to catch the ball. Probably would have landed, got tackled, but it would have been a first down. Probably got that momentum swinging. Didn't have it and just tossed it way, way over his head. And so, I don't know if this is true, but apparently Chubba Purdy has been, well, he's been hurt. I know that part's been true. But then apparently a while, like in the preseason, he was apparently listed as number 2. They were saying like, oh, he's our number 2 quarterback. So I'm sitting here questioning, maybe he wasn't ready for Michigan State, and it's fine. But now I'm wondering, like, do we finally, bite the bullet and try? Because I think out of the remaining 3 games, I think this is going to be, I don't want to say the easiest defense, but I think this is going to be the least toughest defense compared to Wisconsin and Iowa that are coming up. I think Maryland would be, if you're going to try something different at quarterback, this is the game you try it. Not because Maryland's bad, but I think if you're going to try it, that's the game you do, because Maryland's kind of slipping and sliding right now. And I think, if that's what they feel is the best option, is to give us the best chance to win, this is where you do it. Because Wisconsin and Iowa is going to be throwing them to the wolves, and that's not real fair. But weirdly enough, as coaching decisions usually go, seems like they're sticking with Harburg. And I think they've even said they're sticking with Harburg for this game now that I think back to it. So obviously they're not changing it. And I know I'm the one that's been saying, oh, you don't get rid of the hot hand, using the basketball analogy. But in this case, I know it's only been 1 game and Harburg's gotten us all the wins, but I do question if now they are going to start, interspersing Purdy in there. But if they thought he was number 2 in preseason, and if he's been hurt, that makes sense why we haven't seen him. But maybe they're seeing something we're not, because he was definitely not number 2 if you go back to last year. So, another note I had here, I said O-line play has still gotten better, and yet we still look bad. A lot of that goes down to the backup argument. We're playing a lot of backups that were not, I shouldn't say destined, but weren't envisioned to be starters at the beginning of the year. But at this point, that's been an excuse for the last 3, couple games. And we can say that all we want, but at some point it has to be remedied. And, that comes down to the coaching to a degree. I mean, obviously, I still maintain that, the players still got to execute, but it's also on your coach. If somebody's not executing, you got to put somebody else in there that will. But again, I think we're at a point where we really don't have the luxury of doing that. Maybe we do, but it doesn't seem like we do much. What else did I have in here? I tried to put a positive note here that says, as Nebraska fans, we're super downtrodden with the team lately, and once we have the sign of failure come back, we're all like, oh, year's over, we're done. And I get it, but this is year one of a rebuild, and we knew it was going to be tough. The fact that we've seen as much success as we have should still be, commended, and I still think Rule is the right guy to do it. It just really sucks when we thought this game was going to be the one to send us to a bowl, and it should have been. But at the same time, had we won it, we'd be sitting here like, yeah, there's no way we should even be at this point. And then I'd honestly be even more nervous for whatever bowl game we would get, which would still be probably a crappy one anyway. But what else? Yeah, I guess I did say offensive play calling is still suspect, but I did say that. But like as I've kind of slept on it a little bit, I came back to my conclusion of I think he was the analogy of throwing stuff at a wall, see what sticks. It doesn't always work, and I do maintain that sometimes you need to keep it simple. But I don't know. What is the answer on offense? I don't know if any of us are going to be able to answer that. I legitimately believe if we just take the rest of this year into context and then tried to solve world peace, we'd have a better shot at solving world peace than solving our offensive problems. And that might sound a little excessive and might be a little bit just a tad much, but at least with world peace, there's been attempts, so we might be able to build off of that. But this year, I don't know what else we got, but that was a lot. I will pass it to Andy for your thoughts.
Fun little nugget that I remember that came out of Saturday was that was the first time Nebraska has committed 0 penalties in a game since 2005 against Maine, and they still lost the game.
It stayed at 0 penalties the whole time.
The entire time. There was
we had a couple called on us, but they were all declined.
They were all declined or offset. Yeah. So, but yes, there were 0 called penalties because I think there was like an offsides call on a Michigan State field goal that they declined. So I mean that technically could have been it, but yeah, there were a couple that were declined or offset, but there was never any called. So I guess technically a positive going back to the discipline thing, but you still lost the game.
In the area for this game, though, unfortunately.
Yes.
I mean, we could also bring up. Sorry, I know I just said I was done, but for one thing we forgot was the pass interference, which
there were. I
still maintain that might not have won us the game, but I don't think the interception would have happened right after that had that not happened. But I'm not gonna be the guy that says, "Oh, the refs lost us that game," because even if we got that call.
Right.
Still no guarantee we would have made it anywhere.
Right.
That, so,
going back to the whole backup quarterback thing, they just must not trust anybody but Heinrich right now. And I know we haven't seen Chubba, but I mean, if there's he's probably a better passer than Heinrich. But if the fact that he's not even going to come in and try to pass and win the game, I don't know how much trust they have in Chubba even being thrown out there. And I haven't seen him obviously maybe outside of one garbage time drive, but I mean, there just must be nobody that Rule or Satterfield trust right now other than Heinrich. And yeah, like you said, he's already been announced for the starter and he still should be the starter just because again, we don't know what else we're going to get from anybody else. But he's now kind of encroaching on the territory that Jeff Sims did when he first started the season and leading all quarterbacks in the nation with turnovers now. Because, I mean, all 3 of them Saturday were Heinrich. I mean, the interception and the 2 strip sacks. Now, if you look at Heinrich's rushing numbers, 31 yards rushing, obviously, doesn't look that great. But you got to account that the stupid college rule that sacks take away from your rushing yards. So Heinrich, got sacked 7 or 8 times. So count however many losses of yards he had for those. Because his longest run was 43 yards, and he finished with 31 yards. And you're like, well, how does that make sense? How does that work? Well, the college does it stupid and differently than the NFL does in terms of counting sacks against you in terms of rushing yards. Regardless. I would love to see Emmett Johnson get the ball more. I mean, but I think both Grant and Johnson had a pretty good game Saturday of running the ball. And that goes back to Satterfield doing away with it for some reason. I mean, what I had so like I remember texting you guys the entire game was like just keep running the ball. Because I mean that especially the first drive of the second half, I mean, they had 2 first downs or like at least a first down right out of the gate on like an 11-yard run. And they had popped some of those 10, 11-yard runs, just like running straight up the middle. And I was like, just keep doing it. Like, why are you trying to deviate and do anything fancy other than just give the running backs your ball? I mean, the only way you're going to prove if they're proven running backs for the future is you just keep giving them at the games like this. And they didn't fumble. They didn't make mistakes. I think mixing in Josh Fleeks on some of those sweeps and those end arounds is good because he got to the edge and got 6-7 yards out of those. So I think that's also useful as well. But going back to, I mean, you can't, I don't know why we keep running wide receiver screens. Like, you're asking your freshman wide receivers to try to hold a run, like a passing block against veteran Big Ten cornerbacks. It's like that. And, you know, Fedoni's been good, but I think my only gripe with him is he is playing like a kid who has never played football in 2 years. I mean, he can catch you and get you some big yards, but
I think there's an explainable reason for that.
There is an explainable reason. You're right. There is an explainable reason, but I don't think his blocking is very good. I mean, there were a couple plays.
There's
like,
some he's definitely missed.
He's missed, and like even a run block. I mean, he completely whiffs on a guy, and then we get tackled in the backfield. I'm like, dude, like you are so much bigger than these ends. Like, just hold your block, and
or at least get in front of them. Like,
yeah, it's like I know, you know. Again, I've never torn my ACL twice. I don't know what the recovery and like how much of your speed you can get back from what you had before, but I don't think he's very fast setting the edge or run blocking. And, you know, in some of the screens that we ran, I mean, Bullock gets lit up immediately because you see Fedoni block and all of a sudden he just like, oh, he's done. He gives up and then the cornerback streams right through. And it's like, I don't know if that's a Fedoni thing. I don't know if that's a tight end coaching thing. You know, they don't ever give the ball to Borkature anymore, so I can't really say if it's both a tight end thing because I haven't seen Borkature do it, but they also don't run the ball to his side or give him the ball that much. So that's why I'm only picking on Fedoni right now because he's been the most glaring, obvious one to miss those blocks at the same time. But I would really hope that gets improved because Fedoni can be really good for us and he can be a really good player. I think he just has some developmental things to still work on at the college game. And if you want to be a tight end, especially in a Matt Rule offense that wants to run the ball, you got to block. And whether it's the option, I mean, I credit to Michigan State. I mean, we tried the fullback belly option pass once and it immediately got blown up. So I think they were prepared for that. And I think that's what, you know, these next 3 games are going to be is these teams are going to know, you know, what we run now. It's okay. Are you able to block and still execute it successfully, or is Satterfield going to have to try to switch it up? And that's where I don't know where to go with the offense other than I liked how we ran the ball with our running backs. I think Emmett Johnson should probably get more than 13 carries a game. I think he can be really good for us. And I don't know why we aren't giving him the ball that much. I mean, now I know you want to keep running the option with Heinrich, but I don't know what. Yeah, Satterfield is just kind of puzzling me still.
This is going to kill me to say as a classic Nebraska fan, but I really wish we would stop running the option with Harburg because he either like
it's shown that it's taken a toll on him this season. I think he's progressively gotten slower.
Well, yeah, and like you said, his decision making when he would go back, he just looked slow. He couldn't. I mean, granted, I've never been a quarterback. I don't know what goes all into this, and that's part of it. But like, he looked slow. Like his normal decision making, where it's like, oh, you know, take a second or two, and nobody's open, take off running. Even then, he looked like he forgot how to run, and it's just like, dude. And then the option plays just, oh god, and that's been a problem all year, if you ask me, because he'll either misread it, and the guy that usually bites on the running back, he'll already have it pitched out to him which is way too early, which is not how it works, or he'll do that and he'll be like, oh, I need, the option has a pitch in it. I need to do that. And it's like, well, you just gave up the idea of the option. So it's like, I get why we run it. And of course, every person that's from Nebraska that's over the age of like 25 is like, yeah, run the option more. But it's like, it doesn't, it works against worse defenses. And I mean, Michigan State, for all as bad as their record is, they had a good defense. I mean, their roster is really talented. They finally put it together against us. Well, and a couple other teams, but it's just like, it's just rough. It's just so rough to watch the offense or the option.
They're very, and I know why. I mean, they're very limited of what they can do successfully right now. And I think that's the biggest thing holding them back. And I think that is, like I had mentioned before, what Rule and company has to do the minute the portal opens this offseason is you have to find some sort of experienced quarterback that is an actual quarterback and not some sort of mobile hybrid. I mean, you can't keep trying to do. And I always go back to the thought, it's like, what would Casey Thompson look like in this type of offense? Now, granted, losing your 3 top receivers doesn't really help either, but I mean, Casey was mobile enough to still have good pockets awareness. And, does that open the playbook more to get your freshman wide receivers who have the speed the ball? Does it open the playbook more for Satterfield if you have that type of quarterback in this system? And
we would have just tore his ACL sooner. That's all.
Well, let a man dream.
I mean, I agree. I 100% agree. But our offensive line wouldn't have been able to keep him healthy if he was destined to tear his ACL. It would have happened way sooner.
So I think that's what Rule has to immediately look for the minute the portal opens is you have to get somebody in here that is an actual quarterback with experience. And it might not be a name from a big name school or somebody we like, but it has to be somebody that's not on this roster right now. Because I know they said, Heinrich we can keep developing him for next year and everything, but I'm like, if this is how this offense is going to be, I don't want to see what like Heinrich is next year, regardless of how you develop him. And, a lot of this also goes back to the previous coaching staff that didn't do any of this or develop him to be this type of quarterback either, or just be a quarterback in general. But, yeah, I don't know. You guys pretty much hit on most of the offensive points. But I think we can switch over to defense now, and they're not so stellar showing when we kind of needed them the most this season.
Yeah, for anyone who was hoping that this discussion was going to take a turn for the better, you are probably in for a.
You are not a Nebraska fan because you would know where this is going.
I mean, yeah, the defense just didn't show up. The good news is they only gave up 20 points, which in the grand scheme of things isn't that much, but with our offense, it was just enough that we couldn't keep up with it. And it was rough to watch because they were giving up quite a few big plays, as you guys have mentioned. That's really what I think killed the team is because, I mean, we held them under 100 yards rushing. Yeah, held them to 63 yards rushing. So as per usual, the run defense was there. Their longest run went for 9 yards on the ground. So that was good. But they had a couple passes near 50 yards, and the touchdown that should have been called a touchdown, we can look over. But I mean, past that, they were a decent passing team, and I know I was worried about that at some point. I wasn't necessarily sure it was going to. I didn't really have the thought that it would be Michigan State to expose our secondary, but they certainly did. And I think we all knew that of the parts of our defense, the secondary was the most susceptible to, being broken. And Michigan State, credit to them, they were able to find, the chinks in the armor there and really just kind of tear us apart. And our defense, yeah, they broke. They didn't just bend; they broke multiple times, and we can really come back for it. And then the other issue is we just couldn't come up with a turnover. I mean, even one turnover in that game could have certainly swayed things, given us a little momentum. At least gives the offense a chance. Ideally, maybe in Michigan State's territory already. At least for a field goal or something. But couldn't quite muster that, and that was. You're not going to win the turnover battle necessarily a whole lot with the way our offense is playing, but if you can at least, keep it close, keep it within one turnover, I think it gives us a fighting chance. And I don't know that that's necessarily the defense's fault per se, but it's something that has been an issue where they just haven't caused a lot of turnovers in the past. So I know the past couple games they had gotten better at that, but we need all the help we can get. And the defense, whether they like it or not, they are our crutch, and they are the side of the ball that really has to carry this team kicking and screaming into a victory. And so if they can't, then we're in a world of trouble, and we saw that on Saturday, I think. So, but they came out flat. Like I said, the whole team came out flat, and the defense was no exception. There wasn't anyone who really stood out too much, you could say. I mean, Luke Reimer had a solid stat line, but outside of that, I mean, we did have 3 sacks, so the Big Mac sack tradition lives on. I don't know. I think that I'm not really. I don't know. I can see the defense improving. I think they'll get better after this game. I think they'll learn from the mistakes. But just a really, really inopportune time to have a bad defensive showing. I mean, Michigan State's, it's the team that I know I said, and I'm pretty sure they heard me, that I was not too confident on Michigan State to be, at talentless or anything, and they took that to heart, I think, and it
was your fault.
Yeah, 100%. I will say nothing but good things about the Turtle Boys coming in this weekend, but yeah, just really, really bad timing. It's a team we should have beat and should have been able to control the ball against. I don't know if maybe because they started their backup quarterback, and maybe that threw them off a bit. But you should still come in game planning for a team that's probably going to pass more than they run. And I don't know. Defense at the end of the day just couldn't get the job done. So disappointing showing. I think they'll be back. But sad weekend for Husker Nation. So I'll go ahead and pass it over to you, Zach.
This is maybe a worse indictment when it comes to like how I review the game as I'm watching it and what to talk about. With the offense, I had notes upon notes upon notes, because it was like, man, you could point to things. It's like that needs to improve, that needs to improve. With the defense, it's like we've seen so much improvement this year, and then this one I really had no notes, and it's not because we didn't play well. It's not like it's not like normal where it's like, hey, they did the thing, they did great. They're the reason that we won this game essentially. They are the reason that we were able to go and score or whatever. This one I had nothing, and it wasn't because they played lights out, obviously, but it was just, it's not the defense that we're used to seeing this year, which is, again, weird to talk about because we definitely didn't expect that coming into the year. And like you said, Nate, I don't think anybody expected Michigan State to be the one to be like, oh, outside of Michigan that we lost to, I don't think anybody expected Michigan State also be the team that was like, oh, on the roll that we've been on for whatever that means, for Nebraska at least. Yeah, just this was so hard to like look at the defense and really be like, well, what was the issue? That's just it. I really don't know. Is like, at least with the offense, it's like, oh, the offensive line didn't look very good at the time, or like, oh, Harburg couldn't throw a pass very well. Like, there are very clear things that you can point to on the offense and say, oh, this is why things didn't work out. The defense just, there were times where they played well enough that they could have easily been the defense that we've seen. It might have just been a slow start or something, and then they would give up a 3rd and 8 or something. It's just like, oh, well, and then all that momentum that they had built up trying to get, the first couple downs, finished and early and try to get a 3 and out, it was deflated, and you could just tell. I mean, this was something else that I put in my notes too, is just that seemed like coaching in general just seemed lost. I'm not saying like they looked like they did terrible things or nothing, but it was just like just like half the time, it's like even with questionable calls, it's like, what are we doing sometimes? Like, maybe take a timeout. Maybe, I don't know. This one was tough because it's kind of what I said before, the death by 1,000 cuts, where it's like for every good play that we had, it seemed like we gave up just enough where Michigan State had, they had that drive in them to just finish it out. And it's like, it'd be different if we had like 8 penalties as a defense, be like, oh, well, that's what it was, but like, it's hard. I don't know. I can sit here and I can try and figure out what it was, but I have no idea. This one's tough because it was just like, they didn't play well enough to win, but they didn't play terrible enough to call them the reason that we lost. You know what I mean? It's right in that gray area where it's just, they just showed up. They didn't execute. And I mean, again, but this is the whole team thing. So it's not like you can just point at the defense and be like, oh, well, they gave up 40 points. That's the other thing too. They only gave up 20. And in the Big Ten, that's, this is a Big Ten score, 17-20. I don't know. I don't know. And that's the hard-hitting analysis that you get from the Nebraskabilities boys. Andy, I'm going to pass to you.
Yeah, not much more other than what you guys have said. Credit to Michigan State. They out-schemed Tony White, I thought, and a lot of, how to beat a 3-3-5 is exactly what Michigan State did. Hopefully you outbeat the aggressiveness of what Tony White wanted to do, and they did. Some of those big pass plays you saw were just broken coverage of just sucking the linebackers in, and then you got the middle of the field open every single time because, you get the linebackers to bite on the run like you are doing and just use the aggressiveness against you. And there's not much other than I thought their quarterback played a lot better than I thought he was going to play. And some of those sideline throws, we had really good coverage. There was just a better ball thrown at the right time just to beat our corners. And at some point, Nebraska was going to have to rely on them to be better on defense to win them a game. And like Nate had said, force a turnover, just get better field position. But it was just one of those games where the defense just did not play their best when we really needed them to, and those come back to bite Nebraska. But I don't have much more on the defense other than just a good game by Michigan State. And my big gripe is now with the special teams.
I do think, just as one other point, I think this week, like you said, Nate, I think this is the week that we see them respond again, though. Like, we got boat raced by Michigan. We came back and we beat Illinois. And Illinois has done well enough that, we look like we beat a competent team there. I think Maryland's another good test in that regard. It's like, man, we should have won this last week, and now I think how they respond to Maryland is key. I think this because if they do end up beating Maryland again, we're going bowling, and not I don't want to say, oh, that officially is the successful season that we needed, because it'd be great to go out and win 2 more. But if we go and we get a bowl on Saturday, then it's like we're playing with house money at that point. Like, everything else we get from there is gravy. And again, I think we all started the year, and granted, our predictions might not have said it, but I don't know if I was even expecting a bowl game this year. And so, I mean, the fact we're still this close, I think, is still something to be said. I do think the team will respond well, but it just sucks because we were on a pretty good roll there for a while.
Yeah.
October was pretty nice.
October was great.
It was a good month for us. But yeah, special teams. Like I said, we'd already talked about it a little bit before, the questionable punt return and decision making of who to put back there, and kind of leaving Michigan State knowing what we were going to do, because it clearly was evident we were not going to return punts at all. Even kickoffs. I mean, we didn't. I think we returned one, maybe if not, but no, I think they kicked it out every time. Regardless, this was a game that you needed Brian Buschini to give you good field position, and he did not have a good game. He shanked a couple of punts that gave Michigan State better field position, and we're going to see it definitely with Wisconsin and Iowa. Is you're going to need special teams to kind of give you the field advantage position and not hurt you. And, you know, we always make fun of Iowa for having a really good punter and being the team MVP. And I mean, he sort of is. I mean, if you're able to flip a field by a 50+ yard punt, I mean, that does dividends for the confidence. And when your offense isn't moving the ball and you're kicking out of your end zone and you kick a 29-yard punt and you give Michigan State the ball, you're on 35. And it's like, what are we even doing here? So yeah, special teams did not do well. A lot of questionable decisions going into that game. Buschini just, again, the game you needed him to boot 40+ yard punts. He shanks a couple in critical times, and I hope he truly fixes it. If not, I hope they seriously consider looking for another punter, because I don't think you can keep doing that game to game and giving your defense shorter field to work with and asking them to even step up even more than what they already are doing, and trying to defend a shorter field rather than trying to have them, defend 80 yards compared to 40 yards type thing. But yeah, hopefully Ethan Nations is back there next week, and that will just hopefully tell us that they're going to return punts now. Again, this is all under the assumption that we can trust him to catch the ball, because that was the whole point. Kemp was back there in the first place this past game. So, or Billy Kemp might be healthy enough to start returning punts. But either way, I think we have to start changing that narrative, especially if the offense is going to start spit and sputtering and go 3 and outs on short field advantages. You're going to need all 3 phases of your game to help your entire team out. And special teams is one way to do that, is just give your offense 10 to 15 less yards to work with, rather than telling them to go get those 10 to 15 yards because you caught a punt. But yeah, I had always assumed the general rule is you plant your feet on the 10-yard line. If that ball goes over your head, you let it go. I don't know when that rule changed, and I don't know if the rule has changed, but that was always my general assumption of how to catch how to catch punts. Again, speaking from a guy that's never played college football, but I just assumed that was always the rule, is anything up behind your head past that 10-yard line. And if you have to start moving back, just let it go. Like, take your chance, let the punt roll into the end zone. More often than not, especially with a team like Michigan State that's not known for their special teams, you just let it do that. Now with Iowa, you probably want to catch that ball because they're really good at downing it within like the 3-yard line. Regardless, special teams needs to be addressed more. And there was still a part of me that I thought if Nebraska could get within like around that 35-yard line, that Alvano was probably going to drill that kick if we made him go out and try to tie the game up. Now, did I want to see that game go into overtime? Not really, because I think it would have been more of a crap show than it already was. But I think if it was even remotely close in that last possession, I think Rule would have sent Alvano out regardless. I think he trusts him that much now. And, he made his only kick that he had to Saturday, which I get. I mean, it wasn't that long either. It was like 25 yards, but
hey, it keeps the confidence rolling.
It does. And those are my only gripes with the special teams is be better.
Yeah,
Strange gripe.
Yeah, no, strange one, right?
I'd say I agree with that. Yeah, have someone who can return punts. Hopefully, it's Billy Kemp and he's back and healthy and able to do that. If not, I don't know. I'd rather take my chances, I guess, and see if we can help out the offense in any way we can there. Because, like we said, down at the 5-yard line is not the answer to that. So, and I will say I didn't call it exactly, but I have said that I would have liked to see Bushini be a little more consistent, and he was not consistent on Saturday. So I would still like to see him be just a little more consistent going forward. Yeah, like I said, can't be shanking punts. If anything, we need him to. If we're going to be in games like that going forward, we need him to help try and flip the field, give the defense, every chance they can to be able to make plays and things like that. So,
and especially with Maryland, who is probably going to be the better offensive team that Nebraska has played the past 4 games since probably Michigan. You don't want to be giving Maryland the ball with 50 yards to work with. I mean, you need them make them drive 80 yards. Yeah, make them drive 80 yards on you instead of 50 and only needing 15 to put themselves in field goal range already in that type of situation. So, yeah, hopefully Bushini figures it out because I don't even know who our backup punter is, nor
would I like to find out.
Right.
But
Chuba has a Josh Allen arm that we don't know about, and we can just arm punt everything. We can do that too. Josh Allen's really good at doing that.
But I mean, I will disagree with you, Andy. This is where I'll disagree with you. Is I was really hoping Alvano was going to get his chance at the end of the game there, and
Look what I said, didn't I? I said
you didn't. You said you didn't want to see the game go to overtime. Though we never apologize for free football. What are you talking about?
That might have been one of the games I didn't want to watch more ugly football.
The way my heart rate was working with that game, I wouldn't have been able to make it through overtime.
I am a true sicko, but once it starts involving my team, then
yeah, it's a lot more fun when it's other teams, not ours.
Like watching Iowa and Northwestern be 10-7.
That's how you really harden your heart, is when you start seeing Nebraska get involved in the sicko games.
Not me. I harden my heart by just eating butter. Here, that's really good. Here, it's really healthy for you.
Does your doctor
only if it's deep fried? I've heard the health benefits.
Yeah, absolutely. And no, insane. My doctor doesn't know. I don't go to the doctor. I'm a guy. I assume everything can be solved by ibuprofen and ice.
Wait, it can't.
You're right.
But yeah,
did you have any? I was gonna say, did you have anything else?
That's my special teams assessment. I agree with Andy. I disagree with Andy about the not wanting to see extra football, but I agree that I think Alvano, if he had a chance, would have drilled it. So and like you said, it wasn't just a 24-yard kick, but hopefully it's keeping his confidence up, and hopefully keep seeing good things from him going forward.
I mean, I don't have much else to touch on. What I was going to say is that Alvano, and this is not an indictment on him, but Alvano was the shining spot of our special teams, and he was our shining spot with a 24-yard field goal and then extra points. Mm-hmm. That's usually not something that I mean, it'd be different if he won the game. If it was like 23-20, he won the game on that last minute field goal. Basically what we were saying, but he won the game for us. That'd be different. Like then, yeah, that's the shining star. That's the shining star moment that you kind of want to see your kicker get. But man, I mean, I think this to me, in the terms of special teams, just solidified that the entire team just looked unprepared almost. And I don't know if that was quite the case. It just looked like they didn't, like nothing could get going. And I mean, it maintained throughout the whole game. And I think I just had a feeling too, going back just to the defensive side of things, once they started looking like they were lost and getting out schemed, it was like, man, this game is not going to go well at all. But yeah, I mean, with special teams is, I don't know. I put in my notepad that we might need to go shopping for a punter too, but I don't know how many punters you get. But I don't know. Buschini has had set of all right games, but he's never, wowed me. But this game was not it. And this is the one, I specifically remember the punt where I was like, oh, this is where he needs to punt it down within the 20 if he can. He needs to put a boot on it, and it went all of 24 yards, and it was like, oh, well, I shouldn't have said anything because obviously it was not what we needed. But I don't know, man. It was just a tough game. And I mean, I think we can kind of rest there because having to re-talk about it and relive it kind of was not so joyous either. But
not great on my mental health right now.
I suppose we kind of already talked about it a little bit, but Maryland, I don't know. It's been a season of two halves for them. It seems like started out really hot.
Usually is.
Yeah, I don't know. They seemed like they were going to put something together this year, and then all of a sudden they just kind of fell off. I mean, I'm not saying we're a guaranteed win here. That it's a guaranteed win for us, but it's kind of fell off a cliff. It seems. And granted, they played Ohio State, and then last week they played Penn State, which two tougher teams in the country. So you're looking at that schedule compared to ours. There's a bit of a disparity there, but then they lost to Illinois and Northwestern, which we've also beat. So I don't know. I'd say I'm not even going to continue to do the on paper. This just looks like this because our offense has proven every time that whatever it looks like on paper, they're able to completely either overshoot or undershoot it. And every time that I'm like, oh, the offense is not going to score that much, they're like, we're going to score 38 this time. So it's like, whatever. So I don't know. Maryland is going to be a tough challenge, specifically their offense. I think that's going to be, like you said, Andy, it's going to be our toughest defensive. This is, again, the game that I think the defense will respond, and I'm hoping that they do, because if the defense responds here, the Maryland defense doesn't – okay, hear me out. It doesn't scare me as much, but I mean, I do know who our offense
is. That?
But well, because when you say it, it's a problem. I'm hoping I can get away with it. I'm hoping, and also I'm putting a caveat here where I say, but it's still our offense. So just because, they could probably, this sounds bad, but they could probably play the state champion high school defense, and Nebraska might look a little iffy. Maybe. For me, I'll just keep it brief. But my quick keys to the game here would be the defense needs to respond. They need to show us, that they're still the defense that we have enjoyed the last few weeks outside of Michigan State. Offense, really my key for them is just don't turn the ball over. At this point, I think that might be the biggest thing is they can get through a game without turning the ball over. That to me would be successful because our offense is not going to be the one to win us the game. Well, I shouldn't say that. They've surprised us a couple times where they do put together a drive and they score. So, maybe as long as they can do that a couple times in 4 quarters, I'll be happy. As long as the defense can respond based on, I'm hoping that the team is hungry after this loss because they need to be. Again, we're still within range of being able to go bowling, but now we're getting to the point where it's you need to put it together and you need to make it work. And I think Rule and company will do it well. And then for special teams, just get rid of the idea of whatever you were doing with putting Billy Kemp back there, and try to field a punt at least because, I think like you guys said, that hamstrung us so badly. It was you're going back there to catch the ball. And I understand that we needed to do that, but then once they kept pinning us far enough down, it's man, maybe we should, do what coaches do and adjust. And I guess maybe that'd be my biggest thing with special teams is it just didn't seem like there was any adjustment. And maybe that, and Rule did kind of fall on his own sword there. He said, yeah, I wish I wouldn't have done that. But that should have happened earlier. You shouldn't, you can apologize for it later, but it should have already. You should have made the adjustment, but Oh, and I guess my last one is just keep playing a clean game. The fact that we got out of Michigan State without any penalties is still shocking to me. Good discipline. I keep it up. Don't keep not penalizing. That'd be great. All right, I'll give it to you, Andy.
Yeah, I mean, I think my points are always going to be generally the same. Week to week now is stop turning the ball over. First and foremost, you protect the football, good things tend to happen. And like I had mentioned before, Nebraska got lucky those 3 games they won, losing the turnover margin. Finally comes back to bite them, but I think it's just so wacky how even from day one, just like how much Rule and his staff have preached ball security and not turning the ball over, and yet here they are, like dead last in the nation of turnovers. So it's how much of that is coaching versus the player, can go both ways. But I think absolutely the number one key right now is stop turning the ball over. Good things will happen if you do that. You can keep drives alive. You give Maryland no chance at a short field, depending on where you turn it over. I mean, you have to protect the ball, whether it's throwing or running. And I would like to see Emmett Johnson get more than 15 carries. I would like to see, if Grant's doing the same amount of production, get him upward more of 10 carries a game as well. Again, they're both probably somewhat fumble prone, but they didn't last game. I mean, they had some good pop and runs that got us some first downs. They're hard runners. Keep mixing it up with Josh Fleeks in the backfield because he's got a speed threat that can get you on the edge and get you some speed on the edge. Is can you hold those blocks? But the way that Nebraska wins this game is they have to protect the ball first and foremost. The defense, I agree with you, Zach, will bounce back. They will have a good game. You can still lean on your defense. I'm not saying you can't, but you have to you have to benefit them. I mean, you have to play complementary football in all 3 phases of the game. And until Nebraska proves that, I mean, it's going to be really tough for them to have any sort of comeback victories or play from behind type games. Since in all 3 of those wins, I mean, they never trailed once, I believe, or if they did, it was very minuscule and it was less than 4 points or something like that. Nebraska held on to those games and just they never looked back of I guess against Purdue there was a very brief scare that might happen, but protect the football, trust your run game. I mean, they're averaging 185 yards a game on the ground. I mean, just keep running the ball. Stop trying to be fancy with the passes. I mean,
wait, did you say trust the run game? So
Yeah.
you want 50 passes this next
yes,
Got it.
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. That is
You got it.
exactly
You got it,
what I'm
Andy.
saying.
You got it. That's what it's gonna be. I'll
Yeah.
call up Sat tonight. Be like, hey,
Okay.
you know how the run game keeps working? Do nothing but pass. The
Don't
ball.
do that.
Straight up.
You can-
Don't even do it. If you do a run play, you're fired.
You're done. Yeah. I mean, you can still lean on your defense. The defense is still going to be good. It's can you compliment them and just give them some confidence to go back out there and knowing that they're going to at least move the ball and try to score you points if the defense isn't going to be able to score you points too. It's the simple little things that Rule is preaching since day one, and it's going to come with time. I mean, we know we is rebuilding a program. We are at 5 wins year one. I really shouldn't be complaining at all, but it's this game and the Minnesota game that, I mean, just looking at them are just sickening games, knowing that like Nebraska had every single chance to win those games, and just the very small turnovers, well, not small, they're big turnovers, but just the inopportune times for things to go wrong and make those mental mistakes and turn the ball over happened in those games that completely flipped the entire game. So just protect the ball, run the ball, let your defense do what it does and ball out, and good things will happen. Maryland is a better passing offense, as we know. They are going to do that. They are going to pass the ball on you. I don't. I mean, they're only averaging 116 yards rushing, but obviously passing for 280 yards a game. So they are going to pass the ball on you. Is how aggressive is Tony White going to be this week now after what happened last week when we were aggressive and it bit us in the butt, not being able to get to the quarterback in time. So you can be aggressive if you're going to get to the quarterback in time, but if you're not, whatever happened last week is going to happen again this week against a better passing team than Michigan State was. So I'll be interested to see how aggressive Tony White is, and just kind of as the game goes, is he going to be aggressive? Is he going to be more conserved, relaxed? I don't really know. Obviously depends on what the offense is doing and what momentum that is, but that's what if Nebraska can just stop turning it over 3+ times a game, I mean, you give yourself a very good chance to stay in games longer and win games. I mean, it's just, ball security is absolutely number one. And I hope the offense is finding some sort of way to rework that where, you're not having to put Heinrich in those pocket passing situations if he's not going to be able to scramble out and prevent those strip sacks from happening. So those are my keys. Is overall summed up in a point: be better.
Yeah, it's it'll be an interesting game on Saturday. We've got 2 5-4 teams that are going to be battling for a bowl game, and somebody decided to put it at 11 a.m. on Peacock. So good job, Big Ten. We hate you. But past that, I think it's going to be an interesting game for a defense. They're going to need to bounce back, because I think both of you have alluded to that Maryland is probably going to be just overall a better offensive team than probably we've seen since the Michigan game. Just looking at Baby Tua's stats from a glance, I mean, almost 2,500 yards and over 20 touchdowns. They're going to be passing the ball. They're going to be targeting our secondary that everyone knows is a bit of a liability, and so they're going to need defense going to need to tighten the bolts there and really, really settle in. And I think it's going to be a battle. I think it's going to be an interesting game. I will go even a step higher and say, or lower, I guess, whichever way you want to think about it. But obviously the turnovers need to come down, but I would say win the turnover battle, I think, needs to be a key. Like we can afford one turnover or so, but defense needs to step up and make a couple plays to get that momentum back and kind of flip the game on its head. So that'll be my key. And just something competent offensively. Just whether it's run the ball or if we can somehow unlock Heinrich throwing for 350 yards and 5 touchdowns, I wouldn't be upset either. Just figure out something for your personnel that works.
What you do, set the sliders to 99.
They'll never know.
You could have done that the whole time.
Yeah,
Nate, just now doing it. I guess there is something to be said for you don't want to let everybody know too early.
Yeah, Michigan. But those are my keys to the game. I don't know if you guys are ready for the predictions yet, or
I am.
I've got mine.
All right, I'll let one of you guys go first. I think I've got one, but I'm gonna let him marinate for a second.
All right. Well, I've been marinating on mine for a while, and you're gonna love it. So we've talked kind of negatively the whole time, but no one likes a loss, so it'll be better. I do firmly believe that Nebraska plays a gut check game, pulls out a win here, and ironically, I like the score so much last weekend with at least the numbers that I'm going to say that's how we're going to win it this week, and we're going to win 2017.
Over hits.
With 2 interceptions, unfortunately, from Harburg.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Zach's under hits. I am hammering the over.
Interesting.
24-23 Nebraska. Maryland covers, but over.
It's a heck. That'd be. God,
I like some. I wanted to go with a wonky score, and I'm going with a wonky score. But Maryland covers.
I just don't know if my heart can take that kind of game. I'm just gonna throw it out there.
Or Nebraska. No, Nebraska. Nebraska would cover because Maryland's the favorite. So yeah,
Nebraska can cover that.
Yeah.
All right, marinating Nate.
All right, I think I have marinated enough. The juices are bubbling now. I think I'm going to hammer the under. I don't think it's going to be a particularly high-scoring game, and I am going to go with Nebraska 20, Maryland 12. They're going to kick a lot of field goals. I think the defense will bend a bit and break, but not break. So that's what we're hoping for.
We love wonky scores.
I feel like I need to put like a 16 or something now. They get
that was
pounds in a
my original thought was like 20-16. I was like, no, I'll be a little more optimistic.
I was like 16's kind of it's not hard. I mean, if they go for two, a lot, but
miss an extra point, kick field goals from there. Yeah. Good things happen.
That's true.
Miss a couple extra points, kick field goals. I mean, if you get to 10, I mean, you just got to kick 2 field goals. That's all.
That is true. That's a good point. All right. Well, this one might be the toughest, and I don't know. I'm guessing the shuttles. I'm going to guess the shuttle's not big enough to fit the entire team. Yeah. But there's nobody really that stuck out that was a pure suck. They all were.
It was everybody.
So, all right. Well, you know what? How about this? We'll wrap this together. We're going to fire Maryland into this thing because apparently when it came to trivia this week, we didn't have.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll just blame Maryland.
Famously, Nebraska and Maryland have only ever played twice in their historic program football histories. And those have both been within the most recent decades. So,
yeah, I was going to say, I think it was 2016 and 2019.
Well, I guess decade if you start from this year going back 10 years, but yes.
That's how I took that. But I was going to say, like...
not the 2020 decade.
But, that's not trivia. You got to have, something that's been a little historical because everybody would be like, oh, that was basically yesterday in college football years. So, all right. So this one is going to be more or less just fun. But before we get to what this week's is, we got to go back and do last week's, obviously. And we're back to only one submission, but Mr. Chris got it once again. For a reminder, the question was who caught the game-winning touchdown pass in the 2012 game against Michigan State? And that was Jamal Turner. And then who threw that pass was T-Magic or Taylor Martinez or Turf Toe, whatever you want to call him.
Or Daddy's boy after Bo Pelini yelled at him during the Texas A&M game. Whatever you want to call him.
He should have left his cell phone in his locker and not mess with it during the game. Anyway,
wasn't that game like 9-6 too?
It was something. It was something like that. You know what?
It was a really weird game.
If we had some prime T Magic now, we would be like, yes, absolutely, give me that. Mm-hmm. I mean, he still doesn't have a whole lot. He still wouldn't have a whole lot to work with. But man, it'd be something. It would be something.
It was 9-6.
It would be, it would be.
God, what a weird game that was too. The Big Ten before they were even in the Big Ten.
We were just preparing ourselves for it. All right, so then for this week, the question is, what is a terrapin? And this obviously is maybe a slight hint.
We want your best and worst answers at the same time.
Give
us whatever you want to give us.
What is the average lifespan of a terrapin is the bonus. So
not as fun, but you can also give us your best and worst answers on that.
Oh yeah, I can't. I hope we get like randomly like 6 people answering this one because it's just a bunch of random answers. Okay, how about this? Really how about this? We'll give points for the correct answer, but if somebody comes up with the most creative, they also get points.
We'll do that. Yes. We'll do that.
I mean, at this point, you can try and do all you want because I don't think Chris is going to be beat at this point. So, if you are one of the, I hope 6 that I just mentioned that want to play trivia, though, we have All the links, once again, are all in the descriptions that say, either that take you directly to the forum or take you to our link tree, which has the submit trivia answers here button. Otherwise, if you're watching this on the video, you can see at the bottom of the screen, I've got our email account, Nebraskabilities@gmail.com. You can send us all those. I'm not going to make the Pony Express or Smoke Signal joke. I already done that 2 times in a row, or 2 weeks in a row, I think. So this time, how about this? I'll do paper airplane. If you can throw me a paper airplane in through my window, I'll take that. I'll actually give you like 10 points if you can do it. You get 1 shot though. You can let me know
making
while
a
you
road
want.
trip.
You can let me know. I'll open the window. I give you 1 shot to make a paper.
My flight is
shot.
booked.
And you cannot ball it up. It has to be a plane. You can't just be like, oh, this is my paper airplane, and ball it up and throw it through. It has to be a plane. So one more time, Nebraskabilities@gmail.com. If you want to email us, you can otherwise look at the descriptions in our YouTube videos or wherever you listen to your podcasts for the direct link, or to our link tree that has the submit answers here, or whatever exactly it says, something like that. And then we have Nebraska taking on Maryland, as we said, at 11 a.m. on the
cock.
On the 11th on Peacock. So
Yep.
If you don't have the streaming service known as Peacock, you won't be able to watch
Find somebody that does.
There's a radio.
Find friends. Yes, find friends. Find the radio.
Whatever that ancient thing is.
Or you could for the people that know a little bit more about tech, you can sail the high seas, but we are probably not supposed to tell people to do that. So I would not recommend doing that because that's illegal. So don't do that.
Hypothetically, you could do that.
You could hypothetically do it. If you get in trouble, it's on you though. You made the decision. So all right. Anything else, guys?
Any closing thoughts here?
As always, Skurs by 90.
Oh, so defeated.
Yeah, it's getting more depressing now that I don't even know if you've combined the past games, like the past 4 or 5 games, if we've even reached 90 total.
Doesn't matter. I'm not that good at math, so we'll never know.
We'll never know. I'll treat you use numbers in your job.
I don't have a math minor at all.
Okay.
But I'm pretty sure his job is just to go outside and go look up and be like, "Yep, it's gonna be sunny today."
Yeah, there's some weather there.
Weather's sure weathering today.
It's there.
But yeah, tune in. It'll be a good game. We got, like I said, 2 teams vying for a bowl game this weekend. Only up from here, especially after last week. So, as always, it's a possibility. It's Nebraskability.